right. That's right.
Okay, welcome everyone to
Come up here, Sophia, so everybody can see you.
Garden of the App. I'm Sophia. This is the garden. Once a month we have tattoos doing lectures on various topics. We also grow different herbs and vegetables in the garden. I make cushions starting from $15 upwards. Any question? Your questions will be answered.
And you make food. You're talking about the food, right?
Yes,
okay.
I'm selling vegetable soup today, $5. I do a variety of food today because of the weather. I decided to do vegetable soup. It'll keep you warm. Okay. We also sell music and cultural DVDs. Any questions you want to ask, feel free.
All right, thank you, Sophia.
Just want to mention about drum.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm going to talk about that too.
We're having December the 26th, which is on a Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Next Saturday, we're having a drum ceremony, and we're taking a spiritual lift. You know, I'm going to give each and one of flyers, and I hope you to come and experience it.
All right. Hey, Yahoo, if you can, just some water when you get a chance, please. All right, greetings, Hotep, peace, shalom, all that good stuff. Obviously, you brothers have never been here. Who's never been here before? All right, besides you, you've been here before, right? Okay, all right. Basically, we're gonna go over a lot of alchemy, spiritual alchemy. We're going to dispel some of the myths on black magic. My name is Beniti. Some of you know me over the last 25 years by various different names, just to give you a little background on myself. Spiritual names, some people will ask why when you run into certain people that are in the consciousness, their names are constantly changing. And what I basically explained to them, they should be changing as you evolve and grow, because your spiritual name should reflect your personality. It should also reflect where you are in your spiritual journey. So some people have known me over a multitude of names over the years, and I always suggest to people, when you take on a spiritual name, make sure it fits your personality, your nature, and make sure you can live up to it. Don't just take a spiritual name because you like the way it sounds or you like what it represents, but you really need to sit within meditation and find out if that's a spiritual name for you. My background, I've pretty much have studied under a multitude of levels of information. Just to give you a little history, 5% Nation. I was a Nubian for a long period of time, ex-Nubian now. I am a Master Mason, 32nd degree. I'm a Shriner, 2nd degree Order Templi Orientis, 8th degree Rosicrucian. My specialty is black magic and alchemy. There's a lot of myths and spookisms on it. And I find a lot of people that study spiritual consciousness, whether it be Egypt, the Yoruba, Santeria, Ifa traditions, people are still spooked out about it. So when we say spiritual magic, let's clarify what we mean when we say spiritual magic. True magic is manipulation of the subconscious mind. So when you're hearing the term black magic, if you're thinking Hollywood movies, voodoo, Satanism, witchcraft, then you're under the spell. You still need to be reprogrammed, and that's one thing we have to learn on this spiritual journey. In order to get this mess correct, we have to be retaught everything we've been taught. It's all been incorrect. We've gotten fragments of it. The problem that's going on now in the conscious community, and it's not a knock on anybody, but I'm going to say things straight to the point. You don't have to agree with everything I say. You don't have to accept everything I say, but I'm still going to say what I want to say regardless, because bottom line is we have a lot of over-intellectualizing going on in the conscious community, but no spiritual work and no spiritual practices being done. That's the problem. What I mean by that is there's a lot of stuff you can find on YouTube and the internet. Everybody wants to get into these back and forth battles about who was first. The Hebrew Israelites want to battle the Kemetic community, They're battling over these useless topics. At the end of the day, what is the justification to the means? And at the end of the day, it's just a debate to satisfy certain people's egos, and it's a feel-good speech, and then people walk away and we're back to square one. What we have to get into the habit of doing is, again, a term we like to use, putting in the work. Also, just to let you know, make sure you get a card before you leave. We also have a radio show that we've been doing for over a year. It's called Awakening Universal Minds on TalkShoe.com. We've had Dr. Phil Valentine on, Dr. Delbert Blair, Dr. Jewel Pookrum has been on the show several times, Brother Panic, Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum's been on about 6 or 7 times. We've even had some of the authors that wrote these books. I also bring on some European scholars, not because I agree with everything that these people say, but I want you guys to get a broad perspective of what everybody is teaching, and then you make the decision what applies to yourself, okay? I used to be at a point in my life when I was younger, I was exclusive to one particular school of thought. When you do that, it cuts off your creativity. As you get older and you mature and you grow, you're going to find out that all things are connected, but the main thing that connects that one thing is you. So not all levels of information are going to apply to you, and you got to be the one that has to decipher what level of information applies to you not. Now, you might hear some things that you might think in your mind is wrong, you just may not be there yet. So it might appear wrong. And what I mean by that is, we have to understand there is no good or bad. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as evil and positive. They're just varying degrees of vibration. A good tool to understand mental alchemy, and a lot of the stuff we're going to go over, is going to the 7 Hermetic Principles of Tahuti. A real magician, a real alchemist will start with those works there, because it's the groundwork to kind of get your mindset to kind of where you need to be. And in the 7 Hermetic Principles, first Hermetic Principle is probably one of the most important out of all 7. And it says all is mental, mental is all. Everything exists within the subconscious mind. Anytime you go outside of yourself looking for God, the creator, any type of divinity, that's one of the gravest or the worst things you can do to yourself. We have, again, a lot of people that claim to be spiritual and conscious, and they'll use terms such as the Most High. And I'll ask them where the Most High is, and then I still see they're thinking in a monotheistic mind state. Because when you're saying the Most High, your subconscious mind is still impacted by trauma of monotheism, whether you're conscious of it or not. So when you claim to be a deity or a god, and we have to establish what that means, not deity or the god in the sense of how monotheism established it, because see, we tend to have these definitions based on how we've been programmed. But when you say you're a god and you don't fall up under any of those illusionary doctrines or systems of indoctrination, you can't tell me you're a god. And then I hear people likening the deity Ra to the Most High. I hear people, Horus is the savior. See, again, what you're doing is subconsciously you're turning Horus into your new Jesus. And we're never going to get past the funk or the gap of taking it to the next level DNA-wise, because we still get stuck in that mind state. And I'm going to share this with you, and I share this with new people that weren't in those classes. I had put a picture up of a couple weeks back of the deity Set striking out at Horus. And I got a bunch of emails, good and bad. The ones that didn't understand it basically sent me emails, oh, that's disrespectful to Horus, you need to take that picture down. I did it intentionally because I knew all the religious nutheads would come out. And if you're sitting there making a statement that's a disrespect to Horus, you're still in a religious mind state. Okay, that's just symbolic. You got a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it should be in Levian Satanism, right? I'm a Levian Satanist too. I believe in independence, knowledge, and wisdom.
Right.
And I came into this, embrace into another person to have more experience of what I do. So
right.
I'm basically here to, converse into myself, into my subconscious mind of what can really hold.
Right.
And I'm trying to evolutionize myself as a human to see what I can have an outcome later on in life.
And that's good. And that's also the key to this, is creating your own path. See, the other thing, and I'm glad you explained it like that, because when we get into that whole frame of mind as you just explained, so you're open, your consciousness is ready to expand and evolve, so you're still in the stage where you're absorbing. You understand? And that's a good thing. So as you absorb information, different philosophies, cultures, dogmas, you, again, as I said earlier, you will gravitate towards what's going to apply to you. Now, as you get older, things change. Because remember, the first principle in metaphysics is anything that doesn't die, anything that doesn't change dies. So that will actually evolve as you go over time, because there might be things you're doing now that might be beneficial to you, but you might outgrow them, or for lack of a better word, there may be no need for them anymore. So then you'll start to gravitate to other areas, because your consciousness, your spirit, your inner voice, whatever you want to call it, will gravitate you towards where you always will need to be. So that deity, that supreme deity that we're all searching for, because most of us come into a lot of levels of knowledge and information for two things. One, we don't want to be alone. And two, we want to know what happens to us when we die. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if you're Muslim, Christian, Jew, Egyptologist. The only reason why, subconsciously or conscious of it or not, the mysteries of life and death and how we got here is what intrigues people. And we have realized through systems of religion, we never got the complete answers to it. Because monotheism, again, just gives you faith. It just gives you belief. It just tells you you're going to die and you're going to go to heaven or hell. And then they have a whole bunch of traditions and beliefs that go around it. Great. Yeah. So if that works for you, that's fine. But there's a lot of people out here that doesn't work for. So we have to establish, if you really want your to take that next leap DNA-wise, when I said earlier, you need to wipe out everything you've been taught and reteach yourself. There is no Jesus coming back for you. It's not happening. There is no Allah. There's no Jehovah. There's nothing coming out of the sky to save you. There's nobody here that can take you by your hand. I don't care if it's Minister Farrakhan, Dr. York. None of them can take you to the mothership, Nibiru, heaven, paradise. That's all game. So the day of the conscious pimp is over.
I always try to explain this to people, and usually I'm wrong.
Every time I try to say this to people, they think I'm crazy.
No, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
But you know what's happening? As the planet is changing, the planet is evolving, so is your consciousness. Now, you guys are younger brothers, correct? What are you, in your 20s? 18, okay.
18.
Wow, real young. 21. So you guys are part of that next generation. This next generation, they're spiritual warriors. They're not seeing themselves in all the stuff that came prior to it. So this is the type of mentality and thinking that's manifesting now. But unfortunately, some of us older heads who claim we want change and who claim we want to overthrow the system, we still stay in these same levels of thinking, same levels of mentality. We still believe that one person can do it all for us, and that's just not the case. So that you have to accept that. That's
But
right.
here's the thing, what the Second Amendment was for right to bear arms. It's pretty much for us to protect the government from the military, just in case they rebel. But what I'm saying is, if we rebel against them, we will lose power to ourselves, because us as humans, we need control, because, keep it honest, we're all wild animals, but most of us have been into something controlled that we can call ourselves sheep.
Correct.
But the people who try to get out of it and trying to leave out the higher consciousness, better, choose your own path of, righteousness, not in the God sense, going into yourself as opening your soul to know the reality of yourself. And that's how people should see it. Fuck what other people think.
That's right.
At the end of the day, you're yourself. No bullshit God,
That's right.
no bullshit people that think they're all this. Government instilling you, TV, internet.
See, I'm glad you said that. You can't worry about what people think about you. Why? I'm gonna tell you why. First of all, you'll never please everybody. So that's just bottom line. Get out the window. Who cares?
Basic instinct, we judge.
We judge. And here's what's going on. I'm glad you bring up the Second Amendment, right to bear arms. What we got going on right now is a concentrated effort to control the emotions and the minds of melanated people on the planet. Latinos, blacks, and let me tell you why. Every day now you're seeing a police shooting, a racial incident. You're seeing terrorist attacks now. And if those have been following me for the last 20 plus years, I was telling you a lot of this stuff back in the early 90s to mid 90s, that a lot of the stuff that's going on now was going to start happening. Now it's happening. Tends to happen sometimes with melanated people, and especially American melanated people. They get lazy. And what happens is they don't do shit about anything until it comes right to their front door. And I've been telling people, you better start preparing. Don't wait But unfortunately, we still got a lot of people waiting because they think in their minds, they get complacent and they think it's always going to be like this. I'm cool. And I always said, the little test I run on them, I say, well, what happens if you get up tomorrow morning and the grocery store is shut down? The grid goes off the wire. What are you going to do? If you can't hunt and if you can't fight and if you don't know how to if you don't know how to work weapons, you're in trouble.
Exactly.
Because your pathetic, weak, monotheistic, fictitious God that does not exist cannot do anything for you.
And it's not even that. We have been... I appreciate technology, don't get me wrong.
That's right.
But we have been abusing it for far too long that we don't really know what we're doing right now. You know, as humans, we're just relying on this, on the internet. We're relying on bullshit.
And technology.
We can do ourselves.
Well, here's the thing we have to keep in mind. And the aspect to try to control our emotions. So as I was saying, you have all these incidences now. It seems like every day you turn on the news or the internet, some cop shot somebody. Or now we see terrorist attacks on our soil. It's tragic, but at the same token, you got people that live in third world countries that experience that every day. But all of a sudden it happens here in America. Now all of a sudden it's the biggest tragic in the universe. All right? What we have to be cautious of. Now, some of the stuff you're seeing is not real. Some of it's staged. A lot of the ISIS videos you're seeing, it's not real. It's staged. A lot of this is done intentionally to control your emotions, to instill fear in you. So the main thing is,
security.
Correct. If I can instill fear in you, then it opens up the window of opportunity to bring in martial law, New World Order. Then I can sit there and say, all right, society cannot govern itself. We now need to bring in FEMA. We now need to bring in martial law. And they're focused more on the urban neighborhoods. Because the urban neighborhoods is where they start and work their way out. This is what we got going on now. Now, we have to be cautious not to be reactive, but proactive. Now, you got some people that are angry, and they want to take it to the streets. That's self-suicide. That's not going to work. And I'm going to tell you why. First and foremost, if we got to the streets right now, as I've mentioned before, what type of artillery are we going with? So self-suicide. And anybody that's leading you down that path, tell them go ahead and do it on their own and see the result. What we have to do first is, in order for there to be a physical revolution, there has to be a spiritual revolution first. You can't have a physical revolution without a spiritual evolution. It can't happen. I don't care what anybody tells you. Even if you go back into ancient times, different cultures, anytime we went out to war, we always did something spiritual prior before we went to war. So we have to have a game plan. Now, as I said before, if we got together and this tool right here, and we had 1 million man drum gathering, that right there could alter the very foundation of this planet's magnetic grid and the consciousness level in us. They won't allow that to happen, but they will allow 1 million people to go in their backyard in D.C. While that was going on in D.C., less than 2.5 miles away, they had the National Guard, the Army, and various different police forces ready to attack in October in case something got out of hand. You got to understand, these people give you a crumb. By you going to D.C., sitting there hooting and hollering, writing up posters, power, black power, it's not doing a damn thing. They just do that to appease you. Yeah, you can have your day in the sun. That's it. Yeah, I see now they're trying to start. They're not affecting any of the economy like they claim they were going to do. It's not affecting it at all. Because what's happening is there's a deception in it because online sales is up 116%. It's just people ain't shopping in the stores. That's all. The only thing that's going to change is once we take control. If you don't have control of the dollar, you can't influence it. Just because you're telling people don't go into McDonald's and don't go into Walmart, but everybody's still paying their mortgage. Everybody's still going to get gas. Everybody's still shopping in the supermarkets for food. You understand? As long as you live in this country and you're not on your own soil growing your own food and surviving off of Mother Earth, that stuff will never change. So we need to focus our energy somewhere else to get us to that point. But we have individuals that create these distractions, okay? And you got to be careful of these revolutionaries. And I know them for over 20 plus years. And I always get into debates with them, friendly debates. Then take it to the streets now. What are you waiting for? Stop talking about what you're going to do to the white man. I don't want to hear it no more. Stop saying you're going to rob. Who are you waiting for? Are you waiting for somebody to come? Because you have every reason to do it now. You have every aspect that's going on in media and in society to do it now. What are we waiting for? So that right there, leave that alone. What we need to focus on now is getting this right. Because there is a concentrated effort right now to control this. Physical slavery is over, but mental slavery is strong as hell. And now what happens is, amongst us, you can look, you see, you got all these conscious groups divided amongst themselves, but yet they claim to be promoting unity. Okay? Then you look, if you see on TV, you look at all these evangelist preachers that you have on TV, they're all doing the same thing, but they're not battling each other. They're not fighting with each other because they have a common goal. You understand? When there's no common goal or nothing to strive towards, there's usually there's an ulterior motive at the bottom of it. Now, I do this for over 25 years. I don't charge anybody to do this. This is free. I do it just to be doing it. But then you have all these groups. Yeah, fill out, join my organization, fill out this thing, I'll naturalize you. Just pay $400, you can become a naturalized Moor. Come on, really? Seriously? I can teach you how to buy houses with no money down without paying the taxes. You see, these are all traps that we're set up with, and we get sucked into. And 9 out of 10 times, it's all a bunch of garbage. Well, if you want to come in, you can come in through that side. You can come right in through there. So, spiritual magic, alchemy, manipulation of the subconscious mind is the correct definition of what real magic is. So I want to clarify that. Now, I heard somebody mention the pentagram before.
Me.
All right. There's a lot of spookism and mythology on the pentagram and on the 5-pointed star because we've been indoctrinated. You know, we have a lot of Google scholars, unfortunately, and they read Eliphas Levi's books, and the only definition they got on the pentagram and the goat of Mendez is what Eliphas Levi wrote. First of all, as melanated people, blacks, Latinos, and every other group that's affiliated with it, Satanism has nothing to do with us. This has nothing to do with Satanism. Okay? People keep getting confused. This has nothing to do with Satanism.
I want to tell you something about the pentagram because it's actually pretty much how it all started was because Christians back then, you know, people had the different state of mind saying, why the hell do we have to believe in a higher power? Why the hell do we have to do this? We should believe in ourselves. So when those people would leave the church and try to do something for themselves to get a higher consciousness,
right,
Christians would say, you guys are Satan worshippers.
Yep.
No, they're like, no, we need independence. We're prideful into our own beings. So that's how pretty much the pentagram got to being into the whole believe in Satan thing,
right,
and they got themselves into calling it Satanism. But it's honestly being human.
Well, what has happened along that lines, then they took the pentagram and Baphomet and they turned it into a deity. So let's dispel that myth. Baphomet is not a deity. This is something, the Knights of Templar secretly did not worship a deity, Baphomet. Let's break that myth. Let's break that myth down. You have to understand, it's a symbol, it's an occult symbol, and the only thing the word occult means is hidden. That's it. It's a Greek word that means hidden. The symbol of Baphomet represents totality, equilibrium, balance. When you break down the essence of what it is and what it represents, if you look at the full image of it, you see the male head of Mendez, which represents the masculine forces or masculine energy. You also see Baphomet has breasts, androgynous. That's the female aspect, feminine consciousness. If you look in the abdomen of Baphomet, you will see scales, which represents the water element. You'll see it perched on the earth, which represents the earth element. The wings represent the air. If you look in the forehead, you see the kundalini and the flame rising, which represents an activated pineal gland. The reason why it's perched on the earth and a goat has one of the firmest foundations of any animal on the planet, and it always goes high on the mountain, and so it can always see down on its subjects. It's a symbol that reflects a certain inner consciousness. Back to the Hermetic principles of Tahuti, the other Hermetic principles is as above, so below. That's why you also see the symbol of Baphomet with one finger up, one finger down. As above, so below, as within, so without. So it's a symbol that carries a conscious level of energy. That's it. But this got passed down in time because when you get into the essence of the pentagram, you can work spiritual magic by way of a banishing pentagram or an invoking pentagram. So there's certain magic that can be worked with it. Satanists later down the road incorporated that aspect of it into their practices. So this predates Satanism. But we've been indoctrinated when we see the symbol to show you how powerful indoctrination is. People automatically see it that are not knowledgeable, and they automatically say, oh my God, that's evil, that's Satanism. And we have to get out of that way of thinking. So that dispels the myth on that. The androgynous beings and there's a deeper hidden meaning in that. The first beings that incarnated on this planet were hermaphrodites. You can go back into any ancient culture and research that, whether you go back to the Dravidians, whether you go back to ancient Egypt. I've said this before, research, Akhenaton was a hermaphrodite. He had voluptuous type of feminine body on the bottom. He had a masculine, broad feature, man faced, but he was a hermaphrodite. When you go back to the Ogdoads and the reptilians and you research all that, you will find out the gender thing, and the reason why you have to have the totality and the equilibrium. Gender is a tricky thing. We are all byproducts and defunct of defected beings, because the original beings that incarnated here on this planet were androgynous. They had dual sex organs. And I always tell people, if we know scientifically hermaphrodites are a scientific fact, so whose image and likeness are hermaphrodites created in? Ask a religious person that and watch them just come up with the biggest bullshit story you ever heard in your life. And they'll start, you see, brother, God, I don't want to hear all that nonsense. That's faith, belief. I'm not asking you your personal opinion. I'm asking you because in their Bible, a religious person believes that God created everybody in their image and in his image and likeness. And first of all, who said God was a he? Let's establish that fact. These were the authors of the Bible that label God a he, when we know science confirms, when we deal with physical gender of male female, that females were on the planet first prior to men. And the mitochondria DNA confirms that men were not here first. Let's get that out of our head. So now that just dispels every foundation that monotheism stands upon. So we got to throw that right out the window. Now, unfortunately, some of them may not like to hear that, but basically you have to explain to them, look, let's put our personal opinions aside and beliefs, and let's just get right down to the essence and the core of this situation. And then the reality of it will come out. So this is what I'm saying is, once we reestablish everything that we need to be retaught, then we start going down that spiritual path of things changing for us. Because once everything changes mentally and spiritually, not only does it change within us, it can affect the very energy grid of the planet. Back to 2012. Now, you go back from 2009 to 2012. And pay attention to this, because this is important. The magnetic grid and the magnetic poles started to shift leading up to 2012, when everybody was spooked the fuck out and thought the end of the world was coming, and cataclysmic events and doomsday. I was laughing my ass off. And anytime this dude comes out with, anytime these demons come out with a movie, then you really know it's fake. And then they came out with 2012 and really tried to scare the shit out of people. And I was laughing and trying to tell people, look, you're not really understanding what that's about. It's a shift in spiritual consciousness. It's not a literal event that's cataclysmic and the end of the world is coming. People keep getting confused with that. This led up from 2009 to 2012. As the magnetic grids, so did the spiritual shift in our consciousness happen in our mental DNA. Okay? Now you've seen radical change. Now you have to go back to, even though a lot of these incidences you're seeing on the news, the police shootings, the racial violence, the terrorist attacks, though this has been going on for many years, it has escalated since the Trayvon Martin cases. That was kind of the start of it to this next level, and now it's escalated to today. Okay? Now it's seems like every day. This is done intentionally. You have to pay attention also to the movement of the planet and what planetary sign that we're under, because they work magic too. The very stuff that they tell you that they're against is the very stuff that they do. You're going to find out everything you were told to stay away from growing up as a kid was everything you should have gravitated towards. Because they told you to stay away from all this stuff. This is evil. This is wrong. Yeah. This is what we were told. You need to be a good Christian or a good Muslim or a good Jew. These are the things that you were told to do, because that was how you were going to earn your keep and get to some place called paradise. Well, as I've said now, that's changed. There's a different conscious permeating in the universe now. The day of one supreme leader, those days are over. And if you still want to fall under that dogma, power to you. The rest of us will get on about our business. But nobody can walk up to me and tell me, any evangelist, Farrakhan, Dr. York, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, save that shit. I don't want to hear it. That's your stuff. I don't care to hear it. Let's talk outside that box. Because by the end of the day, you're going to find out it's only you that can get you the way you need to go. Does anybody have any questions? Remember, this is question and answer. Because I can talk forever. I don't want to do that. So if anybody has questions, raise your hands. Go ahead.
Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So, explain how it's just total nonsense.
Right. Well, here's the thing. We have to establish the definition of the word evolution. All evolution means is change. So now you have a lot of people out there that debate creation and evolution. Fact of the matter is you can't have one without the other. They coexist together. Now you'll find where the difference of opinion comes in and the arguments come in, that people have a different perspective on what creation and evolution is. So it's debatable. So we could go back and forth about, is there such thing as evolution or is it fictitious? And how does it tie into creation? People are going to perceive levels of information based on their level of perception. So we have to establish that. So when we're talking science, it could be very debatable because everybody in this room is at a different level spiritually, mentally, and they're going to perceive that information differently. So all evolution means is change. So things are constantly evolving. It doesn't just tie into creation. You're constantly evolving as an intelligent, living, thinking being every day. As you study and absorb and become more consciousness, you're evolving. That evolvement, which carries energy, affects the planet every day. So the planet is changing, not just you. And as we're changing dimensionally. That's why I say you have dimensional shifts. What I mean by that is, I'll refer to Dr. Delbert Blair, who we've had on the show a bunch of times. Dr. Delbert Blair will explain it as going from a three-dimensional existence, which is governed by person, place, and thing. So most people try to intellectualize information, and it all is confounded by person, place, and thing, three-dimensional. So we're trying to understand the creator, and I don't want to say he or she. We're trying to keep that creator inside the box of person, place, or thing when the creator exists outside of person, place, and thing. See, that's where the problem comes in. So it's easy to just say, I believe in Allah. I believe in God. I believe that God just poof, snapped his fingers and everything just came about. Because you don't want to focus hard enough on that to really grasp it. So you can't try to explain the creator confound by person, place, and thing when it exists in a four-dimensional existence. So Dr. Blair will say, we're going from a three-dimensional to a five. But nobody asks him what happened to four. The problem is, we're in four-dimensional right now, those that are spiritually awake. Those that are conscious and have disciplined themselves have now broken person, place, or thing. We're able to vibrate outside of person, place, or thing. We're able to astral travel, right? We're able to leave our bodies. We're able to raise ourselves up through meditations and travel to spiritual realms at will now. So we prepared ourselves. We are now four-dimensional beings waiting to be receptive of this fifth dimensional, which is a pure mind state, which they say the higher senses are activated. Clairvoyance, intuition, telepathy, psychometry, any of those higher senses are now activated. Where now you become in a state of existence where you don't ask anymore, you now become. Do you understand? So there's no need to ask, what is God? Because you've become the creator. You understand? Now, I'm trying to explain it in mortal words, which is tough. I'm just giving you a metaphor to kind of grasp to so you can meditate and get an understanding of, because is it the exact way that I'm saying? No. But I'm just trying to give you something that you can grasp towards to get to try to conceptualize it in your mind and then put it into your perspective where it makes sense for you. Okay?
So third dimensional beings, person, place, or thing, like you said.
Which most people are governed by. Yep.
Yeah, like the people under belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
So I've basically watched my life change like that, because I used to be I don't know, Catholic, and my parents really made me think God's and this and that.
Right.
And then one day, literally in the 10th grade, I'm a senior now. I'm just
something didn't sit right.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So mainly it was music I started listening to, conscious rap.
Right.
Made me realize this is really not and so I started looking into it, the chakras and all that stuff.
Good.
And basically it just led me to this. And another question, can I record you? Because I really want to
Yeah, you can record. This will also be loaded up on YouTube.
Oh, this whole session?
This whole session is going to be on YouTube. On my card has the YouTube page, so you can actually download the whole thing.
All right,
Sure.
Yeah.
I have a thing.
Sure.
So, 7 million years ago, ourselves as first humans, pretty much, we could say, our pineal gland or DMT levels are actually much more heightened than what we are now, because pretty much mainstream media or anything is lowering ourselves, as humans, inventing other stuff that can consume us to do unnecessary things.
Right.
Like, we honestly don't need a house.
Right.
We can make a house.
That's right.
We don't need people doing it for us. We don't need the delusion of going to grocery stores to buy food. We don't need the delusion of people telling us a job that we don't really need
Right.
for ourselves. So what gets me thinking is our pineal gland basically shortened and closed over time and leaving us as a whole concentrated sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're trying to open now is what should be known millions of years ago that actually happened. So I'm believing that history does repeat itself.
It does.
And what happened is we're closed and only a few selective of us are opening it up to find the real questions of pushing ourselves to the fourth dimension.
Right. I want to back up something you said. Let's talk about the chakras real quick. Because system of dependency, like you said. Let me show you how easy it is to institute a system of dependency. Like you said, once you become dependent on it, you start to create the need in your mind, your subconscious mind, that it's necessary. Let's just look at the cell phone. Let's just look at that right now. Now, you guys are younger, so the cell phones have pretty much been here most of your lives for the most part as you became older. I'm 44 years old. We had rotary phones, okay? Then it went to beepers. Then it went to sky pages, right? Then the first cell phones, I say, came out, I want to say early to mid-90s when the real cell phones started coming out, not the old 80 car ones. Now you look at here in 2015, some people are lost if they don't have their cell phone on them. We've become so dependent on it as if it's a necessary. It's become such a dependent thing that no matter where you go, any event, people have cell phones. Now, what that also does is cut off your creativity. It cuts off your natural communication and interaction with human beings. I've literally been at events where somebody will text a person who's on the other side of the room. That's a sickness. As stupid as that may sound, that person is within 50 to 60 feet and they're texting somebody. Subconsciously, it's creating a dependency in your subconscious mind. Now, what happens is how they work these dependencies. You mentioned chakras, you mentioned pineal gland. When you start to gravitate towards the lower self, the pineal gland becomes calcified and it closes. What closes it by not being grounded in your root chakra. See, everybody talks about the pineal gland and the crown chakras.
Which is that's just the end of a basis.
But none of that works if you're not grounded in your root chakra. And I keep telling people that. And your sacral chakra. So I hear people always talking about Kundalini rising, right? I always people talking about I want to bypass the first three because I'm working with my crown and my pineal. That's impossible. Because that spiritually disconnects you. What happens is your root chakra, and when dealing with your root chakra, which is synonymous with earth, it's grounded in the earth. Its colors per se, red, pinkish, brown, mauvish colors, are colors that you can work and gravitate towards to absorb spiritual energy. For an example, if you practice candle magic, you could use red and colors toned with red through meditation and visualization. That would be one way to stimulate the root chakra. Now you're going to find out somebody's root chakra and then the second chakra, the sacral chakra, that's not balanced. These are your people that are off-centered all the time. They're combative. They want to debate you all the time. These are people that always set out to do stuff, and even when it starts out good, it turns to shit because they're imbalanced in those two areas. So even when they start out something that's positive, it always turns to shit. Or when they start out to do something financially, they constantly lose their money. It goes bad for them because they're not tapping in and getting that root chakra vibrating so it can take them to those next levels.
It's hard to get balanced.
Well, it's only as hard. Not to you, but it's hard. It's only as hard as you make it. Now, where you become imbalanced is when you're just gravitating on a materialistic plane, where all you care about is going to the clubs, buying the newest rims, getting the latest fashions, putting the weave in your hair, getting the gold teeth, etc. That's what takes that root chakra and throws it off whack. Because now you are gravitating towards things that's distracting you. What it also does is shut down the alpha brain waves. The alpha brain waves are the neural connectors to your neuromelanin. Okay? And we have to establish the difference between neuromelanin and neuromelanin. Your neuromelanin coats every part of your organs, your central nervous system. It starts, the neuromelanin on the brainstem is what produces you to absorb certain levels of consciousness. Serotonin, all that. Now here's a funny thing, serotonin. I'm glad to bring that up. Your melanin is more active at night than it is at daytime.
So it makes you think harder when you're sleeping.
Well, here's the thing. Melanated people, you're at your weak when it's daytime. Now it works two ways against you. One thing that always baffled me coming down here to Florida is watching black people with umbrellas afraid to be in the sun. I never understood that. But then it dawned on me. 9 out of 10 times a black person that has an umbrella and can't take the heat of the sun, one, their diet is terrible, because that's usually a person that eats a lot of heavy, refined carbohydrates and meats, and they can't take the heat and penetration of the sun. So what happens is their melanin works reverse against them and makes them feel sick. How do you know that? Have somebody eat like a heavy burger in the heat, and then especially if they're a dark-skinned melanated person, they'll start to feel sick, like they need to get to a cool place quick, because their neuromelanin is all jacked up. Now, how that principle works is, if you're a very dark-skinned person, you actually need tons more sunlight than somebody who's very fair-skinned or light-skinned. Somebody that's light-skinned, fair-skinned, only needs 20 to 25 minutes of sunshine a day to replenish their neuromelanin. Somebody that's very dark-skinned needs to be out in the sun more, because they absorb more melanin than a light-skinned person does. So they burn it off a lot faster. So this is why you'll find why, and then they'll come up with every reason. Oh, me, I'm so dark, I can't stay in the sun. That's not what the case is. You need to stay in that sun. You need it more. See, I can go out in the sun for 20 minutes, I'm good. Now, at nighttime, when you talked about serotonin, your consciousness is now recharged, reinvigorated. I can stay up literally till the next morning and sleep the next day. I mean, I do my most spiritual work, studying, reading, but probably between the hours of 12 and 5 o'clock in the morning. That's when I'm at my heightened peak. You understand? You will get like that, or if you might be like that, some of you might be, you're going to find out that's how the serotonin and the melanin really work. If you're the type of person that's falling asleep every day at 7, 8 o'clock at night, you need to check that shit out. Something wrong. There's a disconnect there. You got some imbalancement going on the inside, because that's not the case. That's definitely not the case. So that's something to be conscious of when trying to get yourself, somewhere in that grid where you can absorb that consciousness. Yeah, you want to say something?
What kind of altered me was I went to Colombia, and I was with one of my cousins, and
right.
I told him for a shaman. So we ended up going, it took me deep as hell in the forest.
Right.
Now I know all I see is some guy just sitting down, and I don't know how the hell, he just knew my name, knew where I came from, with my parents and everything. I'm like, okay, pretty cool. I got to,
right.
experience this. So he ended up, giving me DMT.
Okay.
And the experience was actually very beautiful, because I actually saw myself literally lift out my body, and I just saw myself just sitting down. And he didn't take crap. He said, follow me, and I just followed him around. I saw, my past. I saw, my dog that died. I ended up talking to my dog on how he got his cancer.
Right.
I ended up seeing I supposedly do have a split personality. He says I'm right now in between, in the middle. I can either go good and go into a self-righteousness person, into a healer, into ways of helping people motivate themselves and get people to a
right.
higher consciousness.
Right.
Which I do music for that.
Right.
Try to open up people's mindset. Or I usually have a psychopathic tendencies, which what goes in my head is just murder and torture, which I do like, but
Well, here's the thing, what you just said. There's something in spiritual magic called the middle pillar. Okay? So you need to become that middle pillar, because you have that both sides. Everybody has that both sides. It's just understanding the extremities of both sides. And yes, we have that dark side, which that would be subconsciously represented, for an example, by the deity Set. And Set represents dark chaos, no balancement, unlimited potential, no beginning, no end. You understand? Set is not a negative deity as everybody portrays it. Actually, Horus was the pussy. And this is where people keep getting it twisted, because Horus was the conformist trying to uplift the conformist mentality, and Set basically said, fuck that, I'm not following any of that shit. I'm doing what I want to do. Those saying I'm going to do me. But again, you have people that leave monotheism and come into religious mentality, and they're doing that God, devil, good and bad thing. Now, DMT, when you use hallucinogens and things of that nature, and shamans, whether it's in Colombia, the Native Americans, what the hallucinogens do is it taps into the hippocampus area of your brain, because that's where the hippocampus area of your brain is what stimulates your spiritual experience. I don't like to use the word hallucinations because that's the wrong term, but what it does is it enhances the spiritual realm. So when done properly, now obviously your experience was good with this one. There are people out there that don't know what they're doing. This one sound like you did because you seem like you.
He made me write on a piece of paper.
Right.
You know, both sides, and he told me 25. If I go through the bad side, at 25, I'll end up murdered, because for the reason is I like the murder. So he says by me would want to do it to other people, but I'm not gonna do it because I don't want to go to jail. But
No, you
if
don't.
I ever do, you know, I'll
Yeah,
get
but
caught.
here's what you need to do though. The Middle Pillar. There's a good book I recommend you get. It's called The Middle Pillar by Israel Regaldi. You definitely need to read this book, especially you. You have to really go into your subconscious mind and figure out why that is. Now, okay. So now explain to me why that is.
So supposedly I met this person, Enki, my father.
Okay.
He told me, he's like, you can pick for yourself. You have two choices of controlling your own life. He's like, I am your true father. He's like, I am your subconscious. I am you.
Right.
And he showed me his true. So he's like, I don't enter you. I tell you what to do for yourself.
Right.
And what had me thinking is, he told me, look at this other spirit. Her name is Anna. She appears in my dreams sometimes.
Right.
Well, he told me that she likes to go through my other side more, because how it all started was the dream. I was watching TV, and then everything just went white, and then she came out the screen. I remember so vividly. I went to my room, closed the door, and out of nowhere I just felt her just come from behind and just stab me in my neck a lot of times, and I just woke up and just felt pain.
Right.
And he kept telling me, he's like, whenever you see her in your dreams, don't pay attention. She won't do anything. If you only pay attention and interact, she'll try to activate your other side. So I have these dreams, and I do see her on the side. I can lucid dream very vividly, and I can describe it perfectly.
Well, I can tell you, as you're talking, she's standing there with you right now, and I'm getting stabbed in the eye as you're talking to me, and this left eye is watering like crazy. But go ahead.
So yeah, she always just leaves me be when I don't talk to her or even pay attention. But when I do, I always feel like I have to like fuck someone up, and I calm myself. 'Cause
That's
I'm
why
like,
I was
have rational
right.
thinking.
That's why I was explaining to you. You need the middle pillar. What you need to do to balance that energy out. I'm using that as a reference. You'll create your own method to the madness. You need to balance that energy out. Okay? Because that necessarily isn't a bad thing. It's just you need to know how to tap into that spirit or that force energy at certain times where that can be conducive. Because most people hearing that on the outskirts might think that that's something negative. To me, that's not negative. What I'm trying to explain to you is that's actually a spiritual warrior protector force. You just need to know how to access it. And what tends to happen sometimes is when there's an imbalancement, for an example, and your aura is vibrating at, could be a very high intense frequency, or sometimes when we're vibrating on a materialistic or a low frequency, what it does is right at the crown, what tends to open up, colors tend to show. And when them colors show, determining the color, if it's amber, dark magenta, that it's a certain emotion where they know they can get inside your subconscious and use you as a vessel. This is what I'm trying to explain. So this particular spirit does that when your halut or your aura is vibrating at a certain frequency. If you let that spirit incarnate in you when you're at a balanced frequency, man, you're going to feel like you could take this finger and pick this table up. Trust me when I tell you. So I don't want to, we could talk about that on the side, but I'm just throwing some little tidbits out. I want you to meditate and focus on that, because you could literally, like you said, leave your body, but you will see yourself literally levitating. Levitating. Like I say, the power is so immense, you can take one finger and literally feel like you're lifting this table up, because that's how powerful it is. But what happens is when the halut or the aura could be a little bit vibrating too fast, too slow, it's just you got so much energy going on, the adrenal glands are rushing, because the adrenal glands also give off a scent whether you're conscious of it or not. So when your adrenal glands are pumping, the spirits can smell that, they sense it. So certain spirits are attracted to the smell of the adrenal glands, which that gets into a whole nother science. Fluidity, incarnate, that gets into a whole nother science. But you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, we'll maybe talk about that a little bit. We'll go on to something. Go ahead.
The 7 harmonic principles I remember last time you had it.
Actually, I think, no. You know why? I did have 5, but they all went in the last week. You know what you got to do? Make sure you get one of my cards and call me and remind me, and I'll definitely make sure I bring it down. You did ask me for that. And that's definitely a book you need, man. That's most definitely a book you need. Because that, to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people that have mastered it and studied it will tell you the same. That, to me, is the foundation to really mastering alchemy and spiritual magic. Once you really study that, absorb it, work it, because, again, you have a lot of people out here talking about ma'at. Everybody's ma'at this, ma'at that. And the fact of the matter is, you can't have ma'at without having the 7 hermetic principles of Tahuti. They're married and they're merged to each other. And ma'at is a physical manifestation of the 7 hermetic principles of Tahuti. The 7 hermetic principles deal strictly on the spiritual and the etheric realm and the vital life force realm. So it's dealing with mind is all, mental is all is mental. It's dealing with as above, so below. It's dealing with as within, so without. It's dealing with the doctrine of gender. It's dealing with duality. It deals with all these things that we need to know to get to understand how nature works, how creation works, and how we operate and function with it. Because a true spiritual magician is able to manipulate not just the subconscious mind, but get these energy centers to work for them as opposed against. Now, this tool, for an example, the drum is a very powerful tool because in many different cultures, you could use for an example, Ifa, Yoruba, Santeria, they'll use the drum and the vibration of the drum to bring down the Orishi. They'll play certain patterns at bimbes so the Orishis can come down and incarnate by certain patterns and certain rhythms. That's what this power of sound is. One of the first things they took from us was this, because we were able to communicate with this. And I know we heard that so many times over the years, but I'm not talking on a basic level. You know, we have one drum, as we know amongst us, called the talking drum. That was literally played in patterns. So I can play a certain pattern, and we were able to decipher what that pattern meant. But certain rhythms also bring down the spirits and it manifests the energy, which we're going to get ready to do next Saturday. That's what we're doing next Saturday in the park. And just a touch on that real quick. That's a participation ritual. It's not a ritual where you sit, come, and watch. So if you want to sit, come, and watch, I'm just going to be honest with you, don't come. It's not an event just to watch. I want to see what's going on. Because you're going to see things there. Things will happen. And the point being is, it may not be for everybody. So I just want to be clear on that, because I've had people call me, can I just come and watch? No, I don't. You're not going to get anything out of it. So this is why I had put on the flyer to make sure you wear any type of cultural attire you want. Just something that you like. Nothing specific. There has to be a little uniformity to this ritual. And it's going to be 5 days after the winter solstice, because there's a symbology of the number 2 and 6. We're doing it under a certain astrological sign. And we'll have a little small shrine set up, something basic representing the elements. And we're going to work with that spiritual energy and bring that down, because this is what's going to give us that spiritual upliftment to protect us in these transitional times. See, what I'm trying to say is, with all this shit going on, people always call me the news. Oh, you saw that police shooting? I don't care. Because, see, it doesn't affect me. What I mean by that is this. You're either controlling the experiment or you're part of the experiment. See, I'm not part of the experiment. So I look at it like I'm watching a movie. This is how this whole thing looks to me right now. I'm watching a movie and I have the remote control. So I can go to any chapter in that movie anytime I want. So when you get emotionally controlled by all the stuff that's going on outside of yourself, then something's wrong. Something's not right. You understand? Because emotionally, what they're trying to set out to do is working. Because here's the thing I even tell people they need to do. It's always this police, some white cop shot some black kid, right? That's the theme of the things. And then here comes Reverend Al Chitlin Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Coon Jackson. Then they all come, you know, and all it is money. And I know Jesse personally. I've done security at Vince and Jesse, and trust me, the biggest hustler, straight up money, and I respect some of the things he did, but when I got in on the inside, I saw a lot of things that I did not like. And that's personal. I'm not going to sit here and get in about it. But my point I'm bringing up is this. When something like that goes down, they all show up. Because now memberships, and what you don't see at those rallies is they hand out, they want you to sign up for NAACP, you know this, Rainbow Push. So it's a big business. So the sensationalism of black and white sells. Now, as we're talking right here, I guarantee you, some young black brother got shot in Overtown. Some young brother in the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn got shot as we're sitting here right now. But where's old Jesse Coon and them when it's black on black crime? But you know why? Because there's no money in that. There's no money. That doesn't sell. Nobody wants to hear about it. But, man, it's big business. It's booming. If a white cop shoots a black kid, man, that's money in the bank.
It's supposed to be unfair.
What?
I just have something on what you were saying about transmuting to the, I guess, fourth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I've just been having a lot of experiences lately.
Okay.
Where I've been going in and out of dimensions like on the car. You know, like
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that.
Traffic light.
Right.
And then I come to and it takes me a minute to figure out where I'm at. So I guess my question is how do you deal with that while I'm transitioning into being able to control it?
Okay. What you have to be careful of is when that happens, and if you're in the car and you, like you say, you shift dimensions and you go somewhere and then you snap back into it. What happens is your alpha brain waves and your serotonin levels and all that, when they start to become relaxed or when they vibrate at an equal keel and frequency, you'll tend to leave your body. It can happen at random. Your alpha, they call it the alpha state. So what tends to happen is when you get into that alpha state, anytime, we call it daydreaming sometimes. Sometimes you could just be sitting down on a park bench and go into alpha state and just completely go out, well, we'll say out to left field or wherever. Now, when you start disciplining yourself more, if you're studying, you're reading, and you're trying to keep the proper diet and things of that nature, the more discipline you instill yourself with, sometimes it just happens just like that. Like this brother too, like he was explaining, and like you're explaining. So what you have to be cautious of, when you feel that, train yourself to feel it coming on. Sometimes you can't, because I'm telling you, you don't want to be in the car and something happened. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'm not telling you to do it in the car, but nothing will ever happen. Trust me when I tell you that. You'll never get hurt. The car will never crash. And I'm not telling you this because I want you to go back into that state and test it out for yourself. Your higher self is guarding the whole thing. What's happened to me, this happened to me back in 2004. I was driving a truck. I swear to God. I lost 30-minute recollection of, I was driving. I realized as I came out of it, I got to my destination. I knew where I was going, but I don't have any recollection of when I started and how I got there. I'm going back a while, like 11, 12 years ago. So that can happen at will. And what I'm trying to say is, you'll notice as you start disciplining yourself more, a lot of these things just naturally kick in. I've also seen it, like I said, playing the drums. I've watched a person that's never maybe been to a drumming ceremony of any sort, but might have a powerful spirit, and I've watched them get mounted by spirits for the first time coming to a drum ceremony. So this is, again, somebody that has disciplined themselves, and I've watched the spirit go through that person and go around to people and tell them everything about themselves. Like they walk up to this brother and tell him everything, their name, and he might tell him, look, I see a sickness on you. You know what I mean? This is what you need to do. You know what I mean? Might go around to him, see, etc. So once you're able to access that realm, it's always there. Now, what we have to understand is when they talk about the chakras, or they talk about the different layers, we got to look at it as it's not up and ascending; it's interwoven around us. All these fields are interwoven around us. So it's like when you see that movie back in the day, the Matrix. The Matrix was trying to show you that. Once you break out of that matriarchal illusion, because that's basically what it is. Once they got out of the illusion and they stepped into that higher realm of existence, now they realized they were the creator. Because even when you go back into ancient Egypt, the deity Khnum, for an example, right? And you take it back to the deity Tar, or Patar, as some say. It's recorded in the coming forth by day, and people don't really know what it means. It's a metaphor, but it's telling you that the deity Ptah thought himself into existence. That's what it says. What does that mean, though? How is one to meditate and focus on that in their subconscious mind? Basically, what it means is everything is formulated on this, has root and formulated on the mental and the spiritual first before it manifests physically. You're going to also find this out, even illnesses and sicknesses. Everything has its origin first on the spiritual before it manifests physically. I don't care what it is. Now, what tends to happen is we always try to attack it physically. Now, let me give you an example. You probably might know people, might have been you, over the years who've maybe had mental disorders or some type of illnesses, and they went to the doctor, and the doctor ran every test on them, every examination, took all the blood they could, and they can't figure out what's wrong with this person. That's because it's not a physical problem, it's a spiritual problem. It's something spiritually that's imbalanced in that person. Okay? And usually it ties into the subconscious mind. Now, when we address things first spiritually, we're able to heal those things which are plaguing us physically. Now, the minor things that always plague us, for an example, flus, colds, fever, which is a sign of infection. Any type of physical ailment like that is self-healable and self-controllable. That's basically just a disconnect. Basically, your vital life force, or they call it your silver cord or your etheric cord, is slightly disconnected. Your etheric cord is it's out of whack. So what's happening is you're not feeding the body enough of intellect or light or energy. So then what tends to happen is flu set in, cold, the body feels out of whack, you start getting severe migraines. This is usually somebody that falls in that category. All that stuff is healable. What tends to happen is when cancers and things of that nature set in, that's a whole nother process. It's a little more intricate, a little bit more detailed, and there's a lot more in-depth work to do. Now, sometimes it gets to the point where you need that medical attention just to get you back to a sound whole where you can maintain it for yourself. So I tell people this: if you get to a point where you're extremely ill, by all means, get medical attention just to get you back. Because all the medical does is mask the problem. It doesn't heal it. You have to understand that. Because in the word doctor, there's a phonetic on words. A doctor can be used as a doctor, somebody that's a medical practitioner. And then you could use the word doctor to doctor a baseball up, scuff it. So basically a doctor is doctoring you up, okay? The word hospital has root in the word hospitality. So basically the hospital is providing you hospitality in case you die. That's it. I hate to say it like that, but that's what it is. So the medical profession is good just to get you back balanced, but then it's up to you to keep yourself there. So by all means, there are points where you do get far, where sometimes you need that extra kick. And they've manipulated scientific technologies to come up with certain medicines, but they're synthetics. Now the problem with that is, the more synthetics a melanated person intakes, it damages their neuromelanin. This is why synthetics and antibiotics don't work well on melanated people. Because if they take it for long periods of time, it can actually throw their mentality off. They can become more crazy because their body can only take a certain level of synthetics. Now, if you're a melanated person, you have to take antibiotics. You should also take a lot of probiotics after that. Acidophilus. And I always tell people you can go into the herb store and get the ones that are refrigerated. It's called probiotics. It contains 5 to 10 billion living cells and organisms. It's the good bacteria that you need to replace, because when melanated people go on antibiotics, it strips the body of all the good bacteria. More so than it would, say, a 100% Caucasian person. So they can intake more of synthetics because they have a lot more synthetics in their blood and their DNA. So if you do have to take antibiotics, you should be on those probiotics to replace the good bacteria in your body in a large amount. Now, there's many good ones on the market. So we need to know these things because this affects our spiritual evolution. And we see nowadays, man, people are running to the pharmacy and the drugstores to get all these drugs and chemicals, and they think it's going to make us better. But we have to know how to utilize them. Go ahead, Yehuda.
So you can say that the pastor, they can heal a person of the sickness?
Pastor, yes, I'm going to tell you why. But now, first of all, it starts with you. Because, first of all, nothing works if you don't believe it works. Let's establish that. Now, I'm not talking about the crock that's on TV, Benny Hinn, and all them that are putting on a show. When one is spiritually sound, One can use their psychic centers. One can use their healing centers, and there's multiple touches on multiple different points of the body to transfer that healing energy to somebody. It could also, somebody can transfer healing energy to water and have that person ingest the water, and it can create healing. That definitely can be. So it doesn't just have to be a pastor. You understand? Are there some pastors that can do it? I'm sure there are. But I guarantee there's a lot more that are full of shit. The ones that you see on TV, touching them and, falling down and, oh, this one here, this one here is, she had back problems for 10 years. And then he touches her and she gets up and she runs around the whole, I mean, that's all for TV. Not that bullshit. Go ahead.
So like,
Yeah, that's
my
fine.
parents, like, because they really like try to force me to go to church and stuff, and like at this point, like I'm just not doing. I haven't been to church like I don't know years.
Right.
So they just been like they think like I don't know. They're like, oh, he'll get back into Christianity. He's just going through a phase. I'm trying to tell him like it's not a phase. Like literally, like it's what like I based my life on.
Right.
So, like, I take it so seriously, and I just think it's like a joke.
Well, here's what you need to do. You're 18, right?
Yeah.
First and foremost, I'm going to come at you with basic reality. First, you're living in your parents' house. So you don't want to be too combative unless you got a plan where you have another alternative. Because I'm going to tell you what I told my son, not on this, because my son was pretty much raised in this. My son's 23, finishing college. He's in my house. He does what I say. There's no negotiating. Point blank. That's just the rule.
Yeah.
You understand? Now, you're having an issue. You're not feeling the church thing. All right? So, a way to address that, okay? One thing I found, if you really, I can take that Catholic Mass and you can create a whole visualize of something else it symbolizes, and you can make that alchemical as you're sitting in that Mass. Okay? I'll explain that to you. So, as you're going, you're appeasing your parents, but I'm changing that whole Mass as it's going on. I'm changing the whole structure of that Mass. I'm changing the alchemical properties that it represents. Because when you take, for an example, the Jesus story, because that's what the Catholic Mass represents, okay? It represents, it's also very Masonic, okay? Because if you look at every Catholic church, they have 3 steps leading up to the altar. That's the entered apprentice, Feldcraft, Master Mason degree. Because they stole everything from Egypt. The word Catholic comes from the word holistic cat. Because they came up with the word Catholic because the Sphinx of ancient Egypt was a cat. Okay, and when they invaded the libraries of Alexandria, then they came back from Egypt during the time of Cleopatra, Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and all those thieves. They came back into Rome, and then they came up with what one word people always leave out of the word Catholic, Roman Catholicism. Remember, it was Roman Catholicism. The reason why it was Roman Catholicism, then they incorporated a system that catered to the Roman pagans. It also catered to the Christians. And then they incorporated a bunch of Egyptian mysticism in it. All right. Now, you've been a Catholic for most of your life, your parents, etc. All right. Have you ever gone to what they call benediction? You know what the benediction is? When they lay out the monstrous and they have the little Eucharist in it?
Yep.
All right. See, let me tell you how you can change that to a ritualist of the deity Ra. Very simple. Because when you see that monstrous, that represents the sun. You know that, right?
Yeah. Like,
You see the rays coming out of it. That's actually a sun. That's an Egyptian ritual. So they're really reenacting the ancient Egyptian ritual. And then inside the center, they have the host, which represents supposedly Jesus. That really represents you. You understand? So when you're there, and then people come and they meditate and they pray in front of it and they read and they study. Now, where's that in the Bible? That's a whole other story. It's not in the Bible anywhere. It's a tradition that they incorporated in the Catholic faith. So what I'm saying is, when I was at your age, probably 17, when I started coming into this, I would go and I would kind of change the whole vibe up. The Mass, the same thing at the Mass. The Mass represents, it goes back, when you go back into the book of Genesis, chapter 14, verse 18. The Catholic priests claim to trace their origin back to the order of Melchizedek. Okay? This is, if you study deep, when they go into the seminary, the whole 9. Now, that comes from when the so-called character Melchizedek in the Bible came back from, when they came back, Abraham and them came back from stealing the booty from the Canaanites, and then they offered 1/10 of it to Melchizedek. This is where you're giving tithes, 10%, by the way, which comes up in the book of Hebrews again. And this is how most churches will justify taking 10% of your money. Then at the same token, you tell them that's an Old Testament law, and then they'll tell you by the blood of Christ, we're not under the law no more, so then why are they taking 10% of your money? That's a whole other story. Because they don't want to talk to you about that either. So this whole order of Melchizedek thing, when you come up to the book of Hebrews, you also find out in the 5th chapter, it says Christ all glorified not himself, but was made a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So now we sit here and we say, wait, the Bible says that Jesus belonged to this priesthood. Now the Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you Melchizedek is Jesus. Wrong. Completely wrong. Because they cannot prove it scriptural-wise anywhere. And they can't take it to the Aramaic and prove it to me. Because I'll tell them to show me in the Aramaic, not in your version of the Bible. Let's go back to the King James 16:11. Or we can even take it back to the Aramaic. Whole nother story. Melchizedek, they say in the book of Hebrews, you find Melchizedek, Genesis chapter 14, verse 18, Psalms 110. You find him mentioned in Hebrews 5. You find him mentioned in the book of Daniel. And it says, symbolically, he had no beginning, no end, no mother, no father, the Ancient of Days. Okay? There's a alchemy metaphor in that. Okay? No beginning, no end. Do you understand? The whole mass is based on the precept of this individual that they call Melchizedek. Okay, what it represents too, Melchizedek, when you go back into the priesthood, now let's go back to the Black Brotherhood of Set, or Satuk, because this is where it all comes from. Let's go back to the order that they grafted in the Star Wars trilogy called the Siths, or the Dark Lords. Or you can go back during the times of the Crusades to Saladin and the Hashemites, or the Assassin Order. All represented black. They called it the Black Brotherhood. Because the color black represented a state that had no boundaries, no beginning, no end. Infinite. This is really where the origin of these orders trace their origin back to. So does the church. This is where they got it all from. Trust me when I tell you. So what I'm trying to tell you, long story short, when you go, you need to focus on those principles. Because if you, in your subconscious mind, are altering the very energy of that mass, you're changing it. You're changing it. So you need to do that to appease, because other than that, you got to get out your parents' house. What I am telling you, do not fight with your parents. Do not try to convert them. Do not try to debate with them.
I've kind of done that.
That's, but I don't recommend it. I'm not telling you what to do.
Don't.
You've been okay.
Don't do it.
It's a no-win.
Don't
look at
win.
it like why.
No win.
Yeah, I almost made my mom cry.
Oh, I
What was
did.
happening in my situation
I did a
was
lot.
we were getting further apart from each other.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it's my brother, that's my father. So, I mean, it's like I had to just tone down. I said, why am I going to lose the person by trying to prove a point or how I was seeing it?
Right.
So I just had to humble myself. And I went to, if they ask me, there's times when I could still go to church with them.
That's right.
And just like what you said, I feel like I changed. The pastor, he feels my energy every
Of
time
course.
I'm in there. And he says something. He says something towards, like I feel like he picks up my thoughts while I'm there. And then I'm like, the same thing I was telling my parents, he spoke about.
Right.
And even my wife said it. She says, you don't notice every time you go there, the pastor says something about what you've been talking about? And that's why when you were just saying that, I could relate to that. Because you can change that by just your energy being.
See, when you're young, we all went through that warrior phase where we thought we could conquer the whole world and fight everybody. It's normal. It's normal to be like that as a youth. But as you get older, you get wiser, because you're gonna find out as you get older, you just got an intolerance for nonsense. I don't want to bother with it no more. So you're gonna learn. A true master learns to establish his relationship or her relationship with the universe and the multiverse and their relationship to others. Do you understand that? So, like the brother used the perfect term, I learned to humble myself and surrender my ego. Just for a moment, but don't mean you can't get it back. So what a true master does is, or she does, I won't stop saying he, because it's not just he, we can move in any circles and adjust. We could be like a chameleon. See, I can stand amongst the church folks and educate and teach them. They don't need to know everything that I know. I can stand in a circle with them and just drop little tidbits, plant those seeds and move on. Whereas if I was your age, I would just want to go for the jugular and tear their heart out and destroy the very fabric of their existence. But then I came to the reality is you're not going to accomplish nothing like that. Because what tends to happen is sometimes it's that little seed you leave. You might see that person next week. Yo, you know what? I want to ask you something. You said something last week, blah, 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 blah. And then it opens up a dialogue now. And then before you know it, they'll be sitting in the class like this. So we got to know how to operate and move in those realm of things. Now, I'm not telling anybody what to do. Maybe you have a method. Maybe you can be aggressive and it works for you. But I would suggest if you don't have an alternative, you living in your parents' house. Because I know... Okay, I would tell my son, you either do what I say, you get the fuck out, period. We don't have a negotiation on that. You know, until you paying bills, because I'm setting you up where you're finishing school. Only thing I have my son pay is his cell phone bill and his car insurance, just to teach him responsibility. And he's working 30 to 35 hours a week. So that's on you. I'm creating an avenue for you to get your shit together. But he's 23. Now, I mean, he's a grown man. You go out and do what you do. But if he's going to stay out overnight late, all I ask is let me know so I can go to bed in peace. That's it. Yeah, I'm going to be hanging out with my friends. I'll be home in the morning or I'll be home very late later. All right, cool. But I'll be damned if you don't call me and walk into my goddamn house and open that door. That's not happening.
That's all parents.
But it's out of concern. That's all it is. It's not that I'm trying to stop you from being who you are. But I'm not just. It's not just you. We're worried about the other knuckleheads that are around you. That's the difference. So it's not that I don't trust my son, because he's very intelligent and he's very conscious of what's going on and he's very responsible. But I got to worry about the other idiots that are out there, because it's like if you're driving, it's not just that you can't. It's other idiots out on the road. So we just need to use common sense. Now, once he's a man and has his own apartment, his own house, he don't got to answer the shit. That's on him. I can still call and check on him, but now he's not obligated to tell me shit anymore. But you're in my house. It's my house. I'm paying the damn bills. And you know what I told him a couple of years back when he was about your age? Because at your age, I was there. They tend to think they know everything. I said, I tell you what. You don't want to do any house chores? You don't want to do nothing around the house? Cool. I'm going to get a lease. I'm going to go down to the store. I'm going to write a lease up. You're going to be in a tent. You're going to be a tenant, and you're going to pay rent every month. Because you got two options. Either you do what you're supposed to, or we're going to have a tenant to landlord relationship, and you're paying rent. Then once you're paying rent, and you're my tenant, you don't have to do shit but pay your rent. So there's ways to combat that. So I'm telling you, don't go that route. You're not going to win. But I can give you suggestions to how you can adapt. So, hey, it doesn't make you a bad person if you go to church with them. Just go. Be done with it.
I just don't want to say that I'm a Christian.
No, you don't have to, though.
No, I got kicked out of churches because, like, for example, the father or the pastor or anything just tell lies. Like, my body would just...
Didn't feel comfortable.
And I'd tell him, like, can you shut up with the bullshit?
But let me ask you a question, bro. Are you forced to go to church by your family?
No, I wanted to go to make my mom feel better, and then, like, I just didn't feel right, and I just had to.
But you got a little more flexibility because you have an option to go and not go. He's in a different boat because he's pretty much forced to go every week. So you can be a little more aggressive. So you don't have to.
Because the thing is, I talked to my mother, and I told her, I'm like, no matter how it is, I'm not gonna be into any religion.
Right.
I just had hours of conversation with her. I'm like, I'm not gonna go the route you're going. If it makes you happy, all power to you. It doesn't make me happy.
Right.
And do you want to see your son suffering through bullshit?
Right.
That's how it's happening. You do you, I'll do me.
That's
I'll
fine.
still have a mother-son relationship.
Right.
Just we have boundaries for
I had the
ourselves.
same exact talk with my mom. Like literally, like I haven't went to church with them in like a year. Like she respects it, but she's like, you know what? You go your way and I go my way. Cause like, I try. Like you said, like I tried convincing her, and I realized that it like the way it worked. Cause like at the end of the day, like it's just what makes her happy. Like,
Well, take this. Say you had an old grandmother, right? You got to understand that the generational gap.
yeah.
You have to understand that. And you got to understand if you have a grandmother, and I had one of my clients that I do spiritual consultation with was in that boat with his grandmother, and I said, think of it like this: your grandmother probably, who knows how much more time she has left. Do you want to destroy at this moment before she makes that transition everything she lived her life for, and you don't want to be the one that put a dagger and destroyed all that? You got to understand, they're going to make the change. They're going to go through the transition too. They're just going to go through it on a higher aspect of it. So what tends to happen is, I want to explain this the best way I can because I don't want to propagate any myths. What tends to happen is when the soul separates from the body, and I'm telling you this from stuff I've experienced, astrally traveling, etc. I'm not telling you to accept this. I'm trying to give you something as a metaphor to grasp to. What tends to happen is when an individual starts to make the transition from the physical to higher states of consciousness, spiritual, they're basically judged as where they're going to take that evolutionary journey of how well they live the principles that they so-called said they believed in. So what I mean by that is if you're a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew, and you wholeheartedly believe in your subconscious mind that that's the truth, you're going to be judged. I'm telling you, yourself. You're going to be judged on how well you advocated that truth. And I've said this before in classes going a long time back. Meaning, all right, if this is the Christian back here, this would be maybe the metaphysicist or the alchemist here. So they're going to have that head start because they've taken more preparations in the physical to get to that transitional stage a little bit quicker than the person back here. So the Christian, the Muslim, or the Jew, or the person that's grounded in physical religions are going to have just a longer transitional period. What I'm trying to tell you is everybody's going to get there, but some people are just taking the longer route. You know, it's like if you Google something, you got the long way, you got the short way. We're all getting to the same place, but we're taking different methods to get there, and that's okay. But you got to know how to adapt and adjust to your situation. You understand? Until you control your environment, because if you got another place to go, then you can do whatever the hell you want. But until then, you just gotta be smart.
Hey, but I got another thing.
Sure.
This is off topic, but so like when I do meditate a lot, but when I take LSD or hallucinogens, it makes the meditation last longer or the lucid dream last longer.
Right.
So here's the thing. I don't know. Nobody could figure this out. Supposedly, my aura be doing this. Every time I be going into that spiritual realm, I end up going to it's dark, dark, a little bit sunny, and it's a castle. So I do meet my father, Enki, and he's just sitting there. So I do go in every time. I sit with him, and he told me this. I think 2 weeks ago when I took LSD and I meditated. I lasted 24 hours just sleeping. Right. But he told me, he's like, oh, back then into when I used to be immortal, I ran empires because of the bond and the personality that brings me close to people, that makes them follow me into a higher portion of thinking. Right. He's like, that was my goal. And he's like, my goal to you is to achieve what I haven't achieved, but I'm giving you steps into how to become what I became. Right. And he's like, your aura, whenever you talk to people, the bond and the strong chemical connection that ends up happening with you touching into another human being, you guys feel one and the same. So I wanted to know, is it like, do you feel in any way, or my aura, because I do bond with people. Like, right. I have just random people I meet, and I have like a close one-on-one bonding moment, and then like a whole chemical reaction thingy. And what I'm saying is, if it feels that way, I want to know from another perspective.
Well, and again, I can give you a perspective, and let me say this. Obviously, you're tapping into past existences, past lives. What tends to happen is if by touch, some of us have vibrated on the same etheric plane. This is why we sometimes have a natural connection with each other. Let me give you an example. Sometimes you could be walking down the street, and as you're getting closer to this person, you're trying to figure out which way to go, right? This happens all the time. You want to go left, you want to go right, and sometimes you both keep going the same way. That's because your energies are alike. The same energies are attracting. It's the same thing where you might see a person and go, damn, I've already met this person before. We call it deja vu. We use these little terms, deja vu. Sometimes not only do we just visualize it, but we feel it. So yes, what tends to happen, and again, I'm going to give you my perspective on it. Is it exactly this? I can tell you that. You'd have to raise yourself up to that realization. What tends to happen is this could be a being that you're connecting with. If it's somebody you run into, then you, like you said, by touch you connect and you feel like it's one. There's very common ground there. This could be somebody in a past life or existence that you were connected to. Because remember, we have to establish reincarnation factor. This is not our first time here. We've all been here a multitude of times. So we might be running into individuals or beings that we encountered in past existences. Remember, we keep coming here until we master this, and then we don't incarnate anymore. You understand? Now remember, you always come back as what you despised in a previous existence so you can master it. So what you are now is what you used to despise. And once you master that, then you evolve on. So what you hate, you become. I don't know if you ever heard that terminology. So what you hate, you become. And then you master it to become something else. You understand? You'll learn that principle through meditation. I know it sounds a little bit, not to you, but it might, I don't want to throw nobody off with that, but I hope that makes sense. But that's what this is really all about when dealing with reincarnation, past existences, past lives. Because if you like for an example, when you're doing hallucinogens, that's going to open you up to the etheric and the spiritual realm. That's going to take you to anywhere. Anywhere. There's no boundaries.
Like, and every time I do talk to him, seems like a dude, long hair, blue eyes, red. That's it.
Okay. Go ahead. But you got to understand this. You also have beings called specters. And let me explain this to you. When you're seeing an image, it could be blonde hair, blue eyes, it could be red, it could be a dark skin. What's happening is specters are spiritual beings of energy and light. They can read your subconscious mind. And what they basically do is, however your subconscious mind has absorbed, they manifest it as that because that's how you want to see it. Now, what I also mean is by this, now you have a bunch of people that say they saw an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary, right? Same thing. They can tap into their subconscious mind because they've already been stamped of what the so-called image of Mary looks like. So what happens is when these spirits incarnate, they have to create a visual for you to see them as your subconscious mind sees them. Because in essence, they really don't have no form. But you're manifesting them by way of your subconscious mind and visualizing them the way you need to see them so you can communicate with them. You understand that?
Yeah, because he said my true passion in living is to, he said his true passion right now is to mentor me to be a voice and a face to the people, to open themselves up to something that we are not living in a false reality. And so he told me, is that you yourself have to figure out how you can do that into a way of passion, and that's why I say music for me.
It's a form of expression, yeah.
For some reason, I am very talented at it. Never understood how and why, but you know, whenever I do my music, it ends up, people, when they hear my words, it ends up hitting them and changing their perspective of, you know, being of themselves, and they change a whole different perspective and gather it to their own information. And that's what I want to be. Like, I want to get more into people to listen to me and express it to a whole rebellion and say, hey, we should not be living this false reality that has been instilled by us, by the crappy ass government, by higher power than them. You know, because we all know the president's just a face and a puppet controlled by higher power.
Right. Well, that's your path. I mean, so you work your path, and hopefully you're able to affect people on that path. All right, what we're going to do real quick, take a quick 2-minute break, and then we're going to finish up. I'm just going to use the bathroom real quick. I'm doing this cleanse, so it's making me go like crazy. So quick 2-minute break. We're going to finish up. We've got about 30-35 minutes. So if anybody has any more questions, maybe we'll finish up with some questions. You can ask any questions. Doesn't have to be related to what we're talking about. Also, 2 minutes.
Hey, boss, what's the YouTube link gonna be? My bad, cause like.
No, let me give you the card. Here, take some cards before you gotta go. You guys gotta leave. Here you go. Take a few cards. All the information's on here. I'll give you a couple cards. All right.
Yeah, my brother.
All right. We'll talk.
Yeah.
You guys travel safe. Be safe.
I will talk to you.
One more thing, if you
Sure.
how to deal with like So I tried to convince like some of my friends, and they're like, "Oh, you're so ignorant. Your body doesn't have a soul, this and that. You're just gonna lie and lie." And like they just like really like make me like really like absorb that negative energy.
That's all. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna be right back.
Let me just handle this real quick.
I could check out the DVDs in there.
Alright. I guess we're just finished. I guess we're just in.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah, I do have a bunch of stuff here if you guys want to look at it before I leave. We'll just go ahead and stop.